Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Brainsmatter. Sleep is super important, and some of us don't get enough of it. Today, I'm speaking to Ashen Vithana and Alex Young from the Snooze Strategist podcast. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thanks, OG.
Thanks for having us.
So first, to start off with, Ashen, you're an actual sleep scientist. Can you give us a little bit about your background and let us know how you got into studying sleep science?
Yeah, I used to work as a sleep scientist for about almost 10 years in both public and private health. Before that, I guess my background, I'm coming from science. I studied biomedical science. And then I actually accidentally got into sleep medicine, and I found a job, I guess, just like every grad. And when I got there, I really kind of fell in love with it. And then I invested myself to study sleep medicine. And while working and seeing a lot of different people, I realized actually there's so much to learn about sleep, because I've never heard of sleep or sleep medicine before going into that job. And while doing that, I realized there's so much you can learn and apply in your daily life. So over the years, I fell in love with it, but over time I just gradually focused more on different roles. But I think sleep still plays a bigger role in what we do here.
And Alex, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what prompted your interest in sleep science?
Sure. So my background's in technology. So I've always been in, well, I started off in software development, working for Nokia, and sort of moved around to the areas of being on the telco side. So working in Telstra or Optus or StarHub in Singapore. So my background's come from that world of ringtones, wallpapers, and then shifted towards doing startup work. So running my own startup. I've worked on 3, had 1 exit, and then shifted into corporate world. And through that journey, I've experienced both great stress, extreme stress from a startup founder perspective, as well as having experienced what happens with the habits that you develop as a founder once you hit corporate. And the impact wasn't nice. And I've had my own experiences with sleep and the lack of sleep. And Ashen and I sort of crossed paths as part of a mentoring program. And I've learned a lot from him regarding sleep and its impact on health that I've never before known. So this has been a bit of a foray in partnership into not only my learning and understanding, but also I thought this is incredible. We should all be taught more about the science of sleep and just how critical it is, because there's so much that we aren't taught. And sleep is the other half of your life that we don't spend a lot of time preparing or managing for, yet it's a good portion of your life. Well, why wouldn't you put more time and effort into getting the best outcome as possible when it comes to sleep?
Thanks for that, Alex. And Ashen, Alex was talking about the study of sleep there. What is sleep science? If you wanted to define it, what is it that you actually study, and what problems are we trying to solve?
Yep. So the sleep science is a bit different to what it actually sounds like. So the sleep science or sleep medicine has got 2 portions. One is understanding what's happening during the night or when you actually sleep. So a large portion of that is studying EEG, electroencephalograms, to understand the brain activity, different brain waves, why there are changes, if there are any changes. And the other portion is the least known part, the daytime activity, because you sleep, yeah, that's fine, but the actual impact is happening during daytime. So that's where alertness, fatigue, daytime fatigue, and ability to focus comes in. So you look into, if you're constantly sleepy during the daytime, that means there's something wrong with your sleep. So you link back a lot of the daytime behaviors to your overnight sleep. Unfortunately, in mainly in Australia and some, like, I think it is changing in US a bit now. Unfortunately, sleep science, sleep medicine always look into problem solve the clinical issues. So biggest portion of that is obstructive sleep apnea. You probably have heard of it. People stop breathing during the night. So that's the biggest chunk of the sleep medicine. If you study sleep medicine, you try to understand that portion, the breathing, respiratory aspect of things.
So that's all things like CPAP machines and so on.
Yeah, correct. CPAP machines and mainly to kind of differentiate different types of sleep apnea, like your central sleep apnea. What does that mean? Because sleep itself is incredibly a younger part of medicine itself. Like it's relatively new. Like CPAP, sleep apnea got mainstream maybe late 90s when Professor Sullivan from Sydney kind of invented the machine itself. So it's relatively young compared to a lot of the other areas. Unfortunately, yeah, focus is fixing the clinical sleep issues, your obstructive sleep apnea, your insomnias, and excessive daytime sleepiness. What we are trying to actually do that in a different way. How can healthy people be healthier or increase their quality of life by improving their sleep overnight? I think that's the narrative now. Some of the US companies bringing in their devices, wearable devices, and try to, I guess, encourage that path, and having discussions around there. Healthy people be healthier and more productive using a good night's sleep.
So I'll ask you this question first, Alex, and then we'll get the scientist view on it from Ashen. So for you, what makes a good sleep? So you mentioned that you had a lot of stress in your startup world. So how did you resolve some of those things and help yourself get a good night's sleep?
It certainly wasn't one thing, but it was definitely a range of things. And it wasn't Ashen will probably say, Alex, just get a good 8 hours sleep. It's as simple as that. And it probably is as simple as that. But then between getting to that point and where you are today are a whole lot of either mental, physical, or family sort of things to consider. So something we've talked about is we don't, you're not always on your own in the house. But for me, it was a case of getting a work-life balance and recognizing the need for that, but also I guess the first step is really awareness of what are you doing that is bad, that's impeding good sleep. And that may be, for me, having your phone next to your desk. It's about having your computer next to your bedside table, working too late at night, and then also learning to journal. And if you go to sleep with the stresses of the day, somebody said this to me, I didn't like it, and you're going to ruminate on that all night. So I took up journaling and started to write down, here's what happened, here's what I felt, and here's what I did, very simply. And that was great to just get it off my chest, and then I could sleep. So it was a number of things that I had to put in place, whether it was habits, whether it was a little bit of exercise, or a balance between both of those things. It wasn't easy, partly because if I take a few steps back, I think part of the challenge was stress also meant finding a solution. As Ashen said earlier, you aim for the symptoms. So I took some sleeping pills, and you take them and then you take them again until the packet runs out, and then you go, actually, this isn't a good thing. I'm now stuck on having to take this thing to solve for that thing, which doesn't solve the real problem. But then it's also recognizing what are the bad habits. So I said before, recognizing and having an awareness of the bad habits you've got, such as responding to your boss's emails or SMSs at any time of the day or night. It's not a healthy thing. It sounds logical that it's not healthy, but when it's the norm in the workplace, you do it. You don't have to do it, but you want to conform, so you do it. And then you do all sorts of other things that all lead to a point where you go, actually, I can't sleep. I can't stop thinking. I'm starting to get defensive. You're constantly on edge because you want to perform well. So yeah, it was a number of things that had to change. They're all lifestyle related. They weren't magic, and they didn't require any medication. I think it's just about awareness and balance in those habits.
Following on from that, Ashen, from your scientific perspective, what makes for a good sleep?
So I think first step when it comes to sleep, what the doctors or scientists talk about is your respiratory aspect. So you must not stop breathing, or they're having some sort of breathing related issue during the night more than 5 times. So when we look at your breathing, you should have stable breathing. Otherwise, if you have some abnormality, it should only happen about 5 times throughout that whole chunk of period. The other thing is the time you turn off the light to time you turn on the light in the morning. If you score that in if you quantify that, 85% of the time you must stay asleep. It sounds simple, but unfortunately for a lot of people with sleeping issues, that varies a lot. So if you quantify that time period, more than 85% of the time you are asleep, that's one of the good sleep episodes, I guess. The other thing coming from that kind of sleep respiratory aspect of things, the blood oxygen levels. And the oxygen levels can drop a bit from awake when you fall asleep because your heart rate slows down, your breathing slows down. If you measure your oxygenation, it has to stay above, I guess 94% would be a really good, healthy amount of sleep. And the final thing I would say is the movement. So if you do move a lot during the night, that disrupt your sleep. So whether it's you're moving your legs, the whole body, or your arms, moving has to be quite limited. If you once again quantify that, if it's less than maybe about 15 to 20 times during the night, I think that's quite healthy, reasonable time. Alex mentioned the total duration of the sleep. It has to be above 7 hours is acceptable, but I always say 8 hours. I think that's a must.
And another couple of things that Alex brought up as well, which I wanted to get your response to, is there's been people saying you shouldn't have the screen or phone next to you when you want to go to sleep for about an hour before going to sleep. I don't know whether the hour is got any scientific basis behind it or not, but is there something behind that?
Unfortunately, most of the things in science are discovered by accidents or came from accidents, right? So you probably have experienced that when in your podcast. So a lot of those time limits don't have proper evidence to back. Mobile phone or the device usage, the definition or the backing of evidence has changed a lot in the last few years. We used to say, do not use your phone, you won't have a good sleep. So the blue light, back in the day, we had blue light filters. Now I think automatically a lot of the devices change that. So the science part, or the people who are against devices, they come in from the blue light aspect. Blue light, what blue light does to you, it stops a hormone called melatonin from producing. What melatonin does, it gets your body ready to bed. So that's the whole point of the devices issue, the blue light. But a lot of the newer research are suggesting it's not necessarily the screen, looking at the screen, that keeps you awake. It's a brain activity, because if it's Netflix or whatever you watch, I was watching a movie the other day, this like group of Taliban terrorists chasing a US Marine, and even during the night I was like, oh, I'm glad that he made it through, because it was intense. So it's not
It was,
blue color. Yeah, it wasn't necessarily the blue color. That mental activity, the stimulant, is the problem with it. So that's where I think one of the most vocal voices on this device issue is a scientist called Matt Walker, who published a book called Why We Sleep. And in there, he was pretty much like, if you use the devices, you're going to die very soon. It's very extreme end of that view. But lately, he came out and said, actually, sorry, I got it wrong. A lot of this newer research is suggesting it's a mental activity aspect, not necessarily blue light. But if you have trouble falling asleep, I do highly encourage you to change or get your phone to automatically have the night mode, or the kind of that warmer color, rather than, so have a blue color filtration. That will definitely help. but I would tread carefully in that advice. I saw on Instagram, some says 3 hours, some says 1 hour, some says 2 hours. There's not really a lot of evidence on that.
But that blue light you're talking about, that's linking to our natural circadian rhythms, is it?
Absolutely, that's right. Blue light is not bad. I think that's the other problem with all these narratives. Blue light is painted as this kind that evil natural thing that's going to come and change how your body works. But blue light is one of the most powerful natural tools you can find. How it, as you said, it regulates your natural circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is almost a body clock, how this rhythm routine works. First thing in the morning, if you can get blue light, so that one of the most simplest changes you can make in your daily life. Get yourself about 10 to 15 minutes of blue light first thing in the morning, whether it's going out and get sun, or there are a lot of artificial devices. I am a bit lazy personally, so I actually have bought a device and I use it first thing in the morning. I don't want to go out in the cold. But yeah, the regulation of body clock, it's one of the most important natural kind of workflows in the body.
I guess that's also a given lockdown and the COVID pandemic and people being indoors. It's advisable then for us to, around lunchtime, to go outside and get some sunshine to help with our sleep.
I have to say that. Sorry, I was just going to say, Ashen, since you told me that many months ago, and the weather here was beautiful earlier in the year. Now it's freezing cold in the morning, but I followed your advice and would sit outside in the backyard where the sun was rising and see, there's hot air balloons in our area that we can see. It was amazing, just 15 minutes. Sometimes I'd just sit there, read a book, but be facing the sun, and it just felt like a wonderful warm awakening in the morning. And it was a small thing to do. So I think once again, it's that habit as well of getting comfortable with it, and hopefully the weather allows you to do it. Otherwise, you're just sitting there in the shivering cold.
How the body works in the morning, usually you need large amount of exposure to blue light. So the brightness, the amount of exposure, body is not as sensitive as during the night. So that's why it's important to stay like longer period of time, and ideally not your mobile phone, but the natural sunlight or a device dedicated to produce blue light will help. At night, your body is not supposed to get light exposure, so your body is actually extremely sensitive to light. That's where the issue with the mobile phones come in. With the blue light, it can sometimes disrupt your sleep.
Sleeping pills. So we know that we don't want people to be on them long term, but for those who are finding difficulty sleeping, are they actually a good idea?
I think most commonly sought medical, or one of the pills is melatonin. You probably have heard of it. It's a hormone that can help regulate your body's response to sleep, basically. So it's a timing thing. No, it is my kind of simplest answer. Don't try to get into that part because your body will get used to it. So if you really can't fall asleep, you can try a few different things. Definitely see a sleep specialist and there are newer medications that are highly effective if it's an insomnia related issue, to address that. Otherwise, there are a lot of behavioral changes you can do. There's one thing called sleep restriction therapy, which is basically, it's good to, I do personally recommend to do that with a clinician or someone who's got experience, not self trial it in your bedroom. So you limit the amount of sleep you get for a few nights in a row and build up a sleep debt. And then you try to release that debt by slowly extending the amount of time you sleep. So that kind of almost address the homeostatic drive of your body, and try to, some people find it a bit more useful to fall asleep that way. If the stress is keeping you up, there are safer supplements that you can try rather than popping a lot of the pills, because I have seen most of the time GPs would recommend like antidepressants or opiates, which have lot of secondary issues causing you, whether it's addiction or you're getting used to it, or altering brainwaves. So you need to tread very careful in that space. I personally take amino acid called L-theanine if I'm quite stressed. Usually about 200 milligrams of L-theanine can help you with that anxiety or the stress building up if it's a work thing. So to wind down, that's a great supplement. I usually have about an hour before I go to sleep.
I just wanted to type in there to say for the listeners, please seek medical advice before taking anything.
Yeah, this is general advice only. You do your own research, but this is just sharing experience. Definitely speak to your GP or a sleep doctor. The other thing could be magnesium. Magnesium seems to be helping a lot of people to fall asleep. Downside of magnesium, some people's gastrointestinal system is sensitive. So you may have experienced some sort of diarrhea if you're not finding the right formula of magnesium. Once again, magnesium threonate seems to be a lot easy on the stomach. Do your own research and make sure you speak to GP before you actually go and buy these things.
Alex, I just wanted to come back to some of your experience again. You mentioned the techniques you use to get over some of your stress and sleep better. Did you incorporate physical exercise or gym into part of that routine as well?
A little bit, insofar as walking the dog regularly. So I didn't hit the gym or go riding around or anything like that. My problem, even up to last year, was something similar to what you've mentioned just earlier today, which was that I like doing a lot of startup stuff. I like doing lots of side projects. I do have 2 small children, and I'd like gaming. So where do I find the time? And that's been Ashen's question for a long time. And it's usually been between 8 o'clock and midnight when the kids are asleep and there's some quiet time, which has meant that I've been sleeping at midnight or past midnight for who knows how long, decade or more. And I think as you get older, you feel that more. And I felt that during the daytime where my eyesight would be quite blurry, and I'd go and take a nap, and then it's like, wow, I can see. It's like having contacts put into your eyes suddenly. But I think what I would be doing was, or the main thing for me was less the exercise, but more the go to bed earlier, which I'm still consciously trying to apply discipline to achieve that, to even today. Exercise wise, only because I've started doing the 5 a.m. club, where you start, you wake up at 5 a.m. and you do 20 minutes of exercise, 20 minutes of learning, reading, and then 20 minutes of meditation or reflection. That's helped me get into a rhythm of, don't worry about hitting the gym and doing a 45-minute hard workout, just incrementally, little bit by little bit, start embedding exercise into your day. And I've already felt the benefit after a week or two. Strength is returning to my body. I'm feeling like I can, I'm standing up all day or sitting at the computer. My core body feels firmer. I'm feeling less tension in my neck and shoulders, which means I don't get headaches as easily. So exercise is a wonderful balance to it. I'd never say I'm a gym rat anymore, but I think just doing a little bit and creating a ritual around it, definitely it's been beneficial.
So Ashen, how much does exercise / gym and stress have on sleep?
Stress have an incredible impact on sleep. I think if you are really stressed, and whether it's work, family, something else, that will disrupt your sleep. Mainly because when you're stressed, the cortisol levels in the body goes up, and that really stops you from having deeper stages of sleep. And on top of that, your arousal rate, we call it in sleep medicine, it's basically spikes in your EEG activity that will wake you up for like 1 to 3 seconds. The rate of those will be quite higher as well. So even though if you manage to get 8 hours of sleep, the quality of the sleep's very poor in that period. Where exercise can come in, I think a lot of people say, "Oh, I exercise, I get dopamine release, I can feel it now." Awesome, which is good, but actual mechanisms a bit different. But it's good if you're stressed. Exercise is a great way to do it. And one way I think it can help you a bit if you do it first thing in the morning. So if you, I always say, wake up, get some sun exposure, and if you do some exercise in the morning, you can release that cortisol in the morning by doing the exercise. When you do exercise, your adrenaline would go up. That will increase, send a pulse of cortisol out. When you release that first thing in the morning, your mental health wise, your baseline always up, so your stress tolerance goes up. Then you do it at night because you're already stressed anyway. So your body have a lot of adrenaline, cortisol released. And there are some studies showing when you release those cortisol in the second half of the day, the risk of depression goes up as well. So that's where, if you can get a cortisol release in the morning, whether it's doing some exercise or even jump into a cold shower to get your body in that stressful situation, I think that will really impact your stress levels. And lower stress means you will definitely have a better sleep. So I would recommend if possible, to do it in the morning to get your heart rate up.
And just to finish off finally with one last topic, I know Alex mentioned you've got an Apple Watch. I've got a Garmin watch. They measure various different things like the amount of sleep you've had, your oxygenation levels, your heart rate, all those sorts of things. How accurate are they, Ashen, and should we rely on those?
If you asked that question about, I guess, 6-7 years ago, I would say no, don't trust them. But I think I have eventually come around. I do think technology has developed so much. So they do a couple of ways to determine the sleep. One, I think, I'm not sure whether you have seen the Aura ring. It's getting a lot of traction at the moment, especially in the US. It's basically a ring that goes in your finger, and similar to what Apple and Garmin does, use movement and heart rate, some of them. So accuracy has gone up because movement alone, it's very hard to get the sleep quality quite accurately. But I think when you add the heart rate aspect to it, it seems to be getting a lot better. I personally still bias towards a gold standard EEG, EMG, ECG sort of approach to measure your sleep, but obviously you can't do it every night. But it's not a bad idea if you have access, get it done every few years, so you know that physiologically the sleep is fine. But the second best alternative for us is one of those, the wearable devices. Only caution I have that don't really let those numbers control you. I have seen people obsessively go like, "Oh, I'm at 80%, I must hit 90." That once again drive you through a rabbit hole of stress and anxiety, and that will keep you, because if you try to sleep too hard, you are not going to get the sleep. You will stay there thinking, "Oh, why can't I sleep? How can I sleep better?" So don't get obsessed about the data aspect of things, but I think accuracy has gone up. There are a few publications I've seen in the sleep and JCSM solid numbers, but some are funded by some of those device companies. So you will know how it goes down, but there are some good independent studies as well. So I do think it's a good alternative now.
Just to add to that, I use an app called Sleep Cycle on my phone, which uses the microphone on your phone to record you all night, and you need to have it plugged in. And then based on that, it listens for you for sound and chunks it up and maps it out on a graph. So you can actually look through it and, here's where you're snoring, or here's when you're moving around. It records the light in the room and all that sort of thing. So I've been using that to get more insight about myself. But as Ashen said, I think the goal here is never that you're going to have a perfect night after night after night. And if it's not like a streak, and I don't think you can guarantee it, in my experience, I think you need to accept it's going to fluctuate. Some nights are going to be great. Some nights are going to be awesome. Some nights are going to be not so good. Some nights the kids are going to wake up early. So there's always going to be variables. So I think a healthy attitude to have is not to aim for a gold standard sleep and feel disappointed in yourself if you can't achieve it. I think that it does fluctuate. You control as best as you can, but you can't control everything. I know. Would you agree or disagree, Ashen?
No, I definitely agree. And I think I think microphone use is good to measure, but I think ideally the best wearable device would be one that incorporate light, sound, movement, and heart rate. I'm not sure whether it exists, but I think closest one would be if at least one combine multiples. But yeah, I think it's a good way to get that data out.
What would we be recommending for shift workers? You know, those people in our society who have to do work overnight. And we did talk about circadian rhythms before. Obviously, that would be highly interrupted. What would your recommendation there be?
Unfortunately, OG, shift workers will always have some level of like a residual fatigue if you keep cycling between different sleep patterns. Human body loves nothing more than regularity and routine. So it's not a spontaneous thing. Humans with the evolution, your whole routine was around the sun. When sun goes up, you come out. When sun goes down, you just go back and relax and rest and try to be safe. So for shift workers, one thing I think you can do if you're on permanent nights or afternoons, don't shift back to a normal routine on the weekend or when you're not working. So for an example, if you start work at 3 and finish at like after midnight, so you go to sleep quite late during those times, don't go to a normal routine of waking up at 7 a.m. on the days you don't work. So stay in a pattern that's in between the normal one and your shift work. So if you do that, the change in your body clock would be about a couple of hours rather than full 6 or 12-hour changes to your body. That shift is incredibly, it takes a lot of toll on your body. So I do recommend to stay in between a normal, I guess, daytime person's routine and their current shift work. The other thing could be the exposure to sun. Whenever possible, when you wake up, just try to get exposed to the sunlight in the morning. And if you are one of those permanent night shift people, ideally block the sunlight when you go home, wear goggles or something to completely block out the blue light coming from the sun. And that will help you to fall asleep quickly and stay asleep as well. But unfortunately, there will be some residual sleepiness which you won't be able to get rid of.
Well, some good advice there, Ashen. And just before we finish up, Alex, you do a podcast with Ashen. Did you want to talk about that just before we say goodbye?
Sure. So we've got a YouTube channel and podcast called Snooze Strategist. Snooze Strategist, we set this up about 6 months ago, and basically you've had a little bit of a teaser here of Ashen and his background, and we take this approach towards understanding the science of sleep, but also understanding how we can practically apply it to daily lifestyle, particularly for individuals like entrepreneurs, people that are in corporate, those that are trying to achieve a lot in life that need to maximize the energy they can get each day, and sleep is critical to achieving that energy. So, the way we say it is that it's about managing your night to master your day. So our channel is Snooze Strategist. We'll give you the link, OG, if you can share out, but we'd love for other people to check it out. We've got a slow growing sort of pool of individuals, and we'd love to also hear other people's challenges. And more recently, we've been looking into energy drinks, and that's been a wonderful scientific foray into active ingredients and what to look out for, but also how do they actually work? How do they help or hinder when it comes to energy management? So yeah, please check that out.
All right, so I'll put the link under this video and on the podcast link as well. So if, all the listeners and viewers out there, feel free to check it out and contact the guys if you have anything to provide feedback or ask questions about. So Alex and Ashen, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us, OG.
Thanks for listening to the show. You can check out the brainsmatter website at www.brainsmatter.com, and you can find all the other episodes of the show there. There's also other information on the site, such as guests who've been on the show and subscription details. You can also find brainsmatter on YouTube, so make sure you like and subscribe if you're a YouTube listener. If you want to support the show, please consider becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/brainsmatter and signing up to one of the options there. Or you can donate either once off or regularly via PayPal. All you need to do is click on one of the PayPal donation options on the right-hand side of the website. If you have any comments or suggestions, you can leave an entry on this episode's show notes on the webpage or on YouTube, or you can send me an email. All my contact information can be found on the brainsmatter website. The theme music Soul of the Machine was composed and performed by Clive Weeks and is used with his permission. I hope you enjoyed the show. Bye for now.